It's us. It's we, the people. In another era, when our democracy was tested, Franklin Roosevelt reminded us, in America, we do our part. We all do our part. That's all I'm asking, that we do our part, all of us. And if we do that, we will meet the center challenge of the age by proving that democracy is durable and strong. Autocrats will not win the future. We will. America will. And the future belongs to America. As I stand here tonight before you in a new and vital hour of life and democracy of our nation, and I can say with absolute confidence, I have never been more confident or optimistic about America. Not because I'm president, because of what's happening with the American people. We've stared into the abyss of insurrection and autocracy, pandemic and pain, and we, the people, did not flinch. At the very moment our adversaries were certain we'd pull apart and fail, we came together, we united. With light and hope, we summoned a new strength, new resolve to position us to win the competition of the 21st century. On our way to a union more perfect, more prosperous, and more just, as one people, one nation, and one America. Folks, as I told every world leader I've ever met with over the years, it's never, ever, ever been a good bet to bet against America, and it still isn't. We're the United States of America. There's not a single thing, nothing beyond our capacity. We can do whatever we set our minds to if we do it together. So let's begin to get together. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you for your patience.
There you have it, President Biden, his first address to a joint session of Congress, giving an elbow bump to the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, and to his Vice President, Kamala Harris. Of course, the two of them representing history behind the president tonight. He started his speech, in fact, by saying, Madam Speaker, Madam Vice President. He said no president has ever said those words, and it's about time. He then quickly turned to the pandemic in this country, a list of accomplishments he believes in his first 100 days, the vaccinations, the $1,400 checks. He then turned to infrastructure and jobs and made the case for his plan to rebuild roads and bridges. He says create millions of jobs across this country, getting a slap on the back there, a pat on the back from Senator Bernie Sanders, who did like what he heard. Senator Elizabeth Warren also on her feet a number of times as he laid out his jobs plan. He then turned to his American Families Plan, where he talked about paid medical leave, paid family leave, child care, universal pre-K and community college, 2 years of community college, making that available, saying his wife, Dr. Jill Biden, would help lead the charge on that. He talked about the racial reckoning in this country, the long overdue conversation, police, race, and justice. He said, let's do something in the name of George Floyd. And he put a date on it. He said by next month. He talked about talking to George Floyd's daughter a year ago. We remember that, those of us who were reporting from Houston for that, when he met with Wjla the day before the funeral. He said Republicans and Democrats should come together in the Senate, which they have begun to do on that policing act. In fact, we'll hear from one of those senators coming up in the response from the Republicans. We're watching the Vice President, former Vice President, one-time opponent of Bernie Sanders on that primary stage. They were the final two standing, and the two of them have worked together quite a bit with Joe Biden in the presidency. I wanted to get a quick report card from those watching right here with us, our roundtable, and Rahm Emanuel, former mayor of Chicago, and of course, former chief of staff to former President Barack Obama. You worked with the vice president quite often. What grade would you give him here tonight?
I give him an A. He made plain speaking into very persuasive speech, and it was common sense. It was very specific to people's concerns, and so I would give him an A on what he wanted to do, and he conveyed his laser-like focus on jobs and jobs of the future.
He didn't talk a lot about the price tag, though, Rahm.
No, well, I did think he actually disagreed. He was very clear about who was going to pay and who was not going to pay and who was going to benefit, and that people that succeeded had a responsibility to the rest of us. And so he didn't, and I think the idea for him isn't to turn this to how much money, but how many jobs, and that he accomplished.
Rob makes
I think
the
he
point.
did that very well.
Yeah,
actually.
President Biden did talk about raising taxes on the wealthiest of Americans. He said the top 1% of earners, and on corporate America, who he said had a windfall under the tax cuts of 2017. I want to bring in Governor Chris Christie, also watching along with us. Governor, what did you make of the speech?
Well, just to respond quickly to what Rob said, the University of Pennsylvania, certainly not a bastion of conservatism, has looked at the Biden jobs plan and said it will create no new net jobs and will cause a lower GDP. But here's my overarching thought about it, David. The words of this speech sounded like what you would hear from a 15-year-old if you gave him a credit card with no credit limit on it, except the words came out of the mouth of an adult who should know better.
Yvette Simpson, did it sound like someone who'd been handed a credit card tonight?
No, absolutely not. I mean, I think he did a pretty decent job. I would give him a B. I think some of the challenges are punting to Congress on issues that he knows we're not going to get 10 Republican votes on. So I know he needs to be prepared for executive action on police brutality. We cannot wait for Republicans on that. His health care plan was light. He didn't talk about the crisis at the border enough. All things that I hope we get the chance to talk about in analysis. I think overall, he did the things he needed to do. He talked about the big picture. I think the outages are the places where he didn't expound about how he's actually going to get it done, and he didn't talk about how he's going to get it done if Congress does not act.
Yvette Simpson watching this right along with us, along with Governor Christie and Rahm Emanuel. And I wanted to check in with Mary Bruce, who's right there inside the House chamber. You know, at times it was hard to tell that there were only a couple hundred lawmakers in there because without a cutaway, you wouldn't know it, Mary, with the applause and the energy in the room. But how did it play in the room and give us the temperature from both sides?
Yeah, I think you're right, David. You know, despite this far more casual atmosphere here, some of those tried and true elements of a joint address came through, right? The much smaller crowd still able to keep up those applause lines. But it also was clear that, you know, even with it can't mask the displeasure from the opposition, right? Despite a few bipartisan applause lines, Republicans stayed mostly in their seats as the president outlined his big recovery push. They were largely stone-faced. And, you know, this is a president who ran on uniting the country, but he's been criticized, of course, for putting bipartisanship aside in favor of accomplishing his agenda. And he made it clear, look, he's willing to entertain Republican ideas and counter proposals, but only to a point. Also making it clear that he's not just going to wait around for bipartisanship. And I have to tell you, even if, of course, he goes it alone, that isn't a given. I was taking a really close eye on Senator Manchin, the critical Democrat of West Virginia. He's made clear he's not on board with this deep price tag of some of the president's proposals. He spent much of the speech taking copious notes, looking at his phone, often not standing with his Democratic colleagues during the applause lines. And David, I'm struck by what we're seeing just now. You know, President Biden has been, you know, sort of robbed of a lot of the normal interactions that a president would have with members of Congress because of this pandemic. This is a rare moment to see the president just being able to chat with some of his former colleagues, chatting with members of Congress. It is pretty remarkable, you know, given the fact that Joe Biden spent 36 years in the Senate. He's been here for 8 of these addresses as vice president, now the first as president. Now he's just trying to catch up with some old friends, it seems.
Yeah, it was finally his turn to stand up there and give the speech himself after standing behind former President Obama for so many addresses to Congress. And as you point out, Mary, Joe Biden, this is who he is, this sort of exchange of energy with lawmakers on the floor, his outreach tonight to Republicans in that room, and as you point out, the reaction helping us to understand that there wasn't always the most welcoming of that invitation from the other side. But I want to bring in our chief Washington correspondent, Jonathan Karl, because we know that Joe Biden out in the campaign trail talked an awful lot about his history in the Senate, John, more than 30 years. He said he was so good at reaching across the aisle. And to be quite frank, you know, this COVID relief bill, his first major legislative achievement, not one Republican vote.
He's had an incredibly bold first 99 days here, really bold, sweeping legislation on COVID relief. But it's also the most expensive bill that Congress has ever passed without a single vote from the opposition party. He ad-libbed a moment tonight, David, to Mitch McConnell, saying he'll never forget the moment when McConnell stood up and said that a bill funding cancer research should be named after Beau Biden, Joe Biden's son. And that was a you know a moment, classic Biden moment. But I don't think Republicans heard much of anything in this speech that they will be able to work with. They heard an agenda for the next 100 days and beyond that includes even more spending than what we saw in the first 100 days, tax increases across the board on upper income Americans and businesses that Republicans absolutely will not support. I don't think there will be any support for those proposals, not to mention what he was talking about on comprehensive immigration reform, gun control. Police reform is probably the one area where there's a real chance for bipartisan agreement, but not much in here that Republicans will latch on to at all.
And it's interesting, we've heard from the president himself and his advisors, his closest advisors. Anita Dunn, for one, has said in recent days that when it comes to bipartisan, if you look it up in the dictionary, it simply says Democrats and Republicans, not necessarily lawmakers in Congress, but Democrats and Republicans out across the country. And Martha, you've traveled the country often, polling people out in America about what they're thinking, about what they're seeing in Washington. And I was struck that this speech, it seemed Joe Biden was trying to reach even past Congress and to Republican independents and Democrats out there in the country.
That's really what I took away from it too, David. He's really trying to bring the country together. It was a make America feel good night, make America feel Pride night, and trying to talk directly to people, which is, of course, Joe Biden's strength. But he was also talking to the rest of the world. And I, of course, was struck by that and looking at his foreign policy. He did not say a lot new there. He did not have a lot of new ideas other than pulling the troops out of Afghanistan. That is certainly new, but he's done that in the last week or so. He announced that. For what purpose does the gentleman from Maryland? As the rest of the world looked at this tonight, they saw what democracy is. They saw a country with a president who is proud of what we have done with COVID, with the vaccinations, and what that all means.
And we have to remember that that's what we're all living through collectively in this country, this pandemic right now. There you see it, President Biden leaving the House chamber. We should mention that in a moment, on the other side of the break, we're going to be hearing the Republican response to the president from a rising star within the Republican Party, South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, who, by the way, could be a major deal maker in the weeks and months to come on one of the biggest issues of the night. We're going to dive into all that after his response, which comes your way in just a moment.
Next, a rising star in the GOP. Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina gives the Republican response.
You want to know your greatest strength?
Boyish charm, good looks. Critics are raving about Tom Clancy's Without Remorse.
Has it occurred to you that John Kelly has done something we can't? They're gonna play by my rules now.
Tom Clancy's Without Remorse. Rated R. April 30th. Only on Prime Video.
So you want to make the best burger ever? Then make it. That means selling everything. And eating nothing but cheese till you find the perfect slice. Even if everyone asks you, another burger truck? Don't listen to them. That means cooking day and night until you got paid. That means adding people to the payroll. Hi, Mom. That means best burger ever.
Intuit QuickBooks helps small businesses be more successful with payments, payroll, banking, and live bookkeeping.
We love our new home. There's so much space.
We have a guest room now.
But we have ants.
You're slouching again, Ted.
Expired. Expired. Expired.
Thanks, Aunt Bonnie.
It's a lot of house. I hope you can keep it clean.
At least Geico makes bundling our home and car insurance easy.
Which helps us save a lot of money.
Oh, Teddy, did you get my friend request?
I'll have to check.
Aunt Joni's here.
For bundling made easy, go to geico.com.
Tonight, it's a big night for the president as he addresses Congress and the nation. And tomorrow morning, Vice President Kamala Harris in a GMA exclusive, facing Robin, George, and all the tough questions. Tomorrow morning, ABC's Good Morning America.
You've waited your whole life for this. You've trained and practiced hours. Then finally, it hits. Thursday, A new generation of superstars take the first step in crafting their legacy.
Every day, I'm thinking about how I can create a better future for my daughter.
Be there for the moment it all begins.
All I ever wanted to do in life is make my parents proud.
The NFL Draft, live Thursday on ABC.
Pick your time, and a local Redfin agent will help you find
The one.
on-demand home tours from Redfin.
Imagine a future in which a vaccine for COVID-19 was never discovered. Schools remain closed, seniors isolated from loved ones, workers and families with nowhere to turn. Imagine a world in chaos, an America unrecognizable to any of us. Under Nancy Pelosi's foreign drug pricing schemes, the next time a crisis occurs, it won't be hard to imagine at all. Say no to H.R. 3.
And Doug.
Liberty Mutual customizes your car insurance, so you only pay for what you need.
Thank you.
Hey, no, Liam. Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty. The inspiring story of the DMV's newest national champs, 11.
A presidential address to Congress and the nation, and the Republican response. Here again, David Muir.
We're so glad you're with us here tonight in South Carolina. Senator Tim Scott about to deliver the Republican response to the president's address tonight. Senator Scott, of course, a rising star in the Republican Party. He's the Senate's only black Republican, and let's learn a little bit more about him before you hear his response to President Biden. Let's go to our senior congressional correspondent, Rachel Scott, with us up on the Hill tonight. Rachel?
David, well, he's been leading the bipartisan talks to the Republican Party on the issue of police reform. He told me today that they are making progress on this issue. Expect him to touch on that. He also says that he wants to talk about tonight about where Democrats and Republicans can find common ground, but also the areas and where they differ. He says tonight he'll be unapologetically conservative. David?
A lot of eyes on him within the Republican Party, and we should mention he's closely aligned with Kevin McCarthy, the leader in the House, and he was handpicked by the Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, who said he could think of no one better to respond to President Biden tonight. So let's listen now to Senator Tim Scott.
Good evening. I'm Senator Tim Scott from the great state of South Carolina. We just heard President Biden's first address to Congress. Our president seems like a good man. His speech was full of good words, but President Biden promised you a specific kind of leadership. He promised to unite a nation, to lower the temperature, to govern for all Americans, no matter how we voted. This was the pitch. You just heard it again. But our nation is starving for more than empty platitudes. We need policies and progress that brings us closer together. But 3 months in, the actions of the president and his party are pulling us further and further apart. I won't waste your time with finger pointing or partisan bickering. You can get that on TV anytime you want. I want to have an honest conversation about common sense and common ground, about this feeling that our nation is sliding off its shared foundation and how we move forward together. Growing up, I never dreamed I would be standing here tonight. When I was a kid, my parents divorced. My mother, my brother, and I moved in with my grandparents. 3 of us sharing one bedroom. I was disillusioned and angry, and I nearly failed out of school. But I was blessed. First, with a praying mama. And let me say this, to the single mothers out there who are working their tails off, working hard, trying to make the ends meet, wondering if it's worth it, you can bet it is. God bless your amazing effort on part of your kids. I was also blessed by a Chick-fil-A operator, John Moniz, and finally with a string of opportunities that are only possible here in America. This past year, I've watched COVID attack every rung of the ladder that helped me up. So many families have lost parents and grandparents too early. So many small businesses have gone under. Becoming a Christian transformed my life, but for months, too many churches were shut down. Most of all, I'm saddened that millions of kids have lost a year of learning when they could not afford to lose a single day. Locking vulnerable kids out of the classroom is locking adults out of their future. Our public schools should have reopened months ago. Other countries did. Private and religious schools did. Science has shown for months that schools are safe. But too often, powerful grown-ups set science aside, and kids like me were left behind. The clearest case I've seen for school choice in our lifetimes, because we know that education is the closest thing to magic in America. Last year, under Republican leadership, we passed 5 bipartisan COVID packages. Congress supported our schools, our hospitals, saved our economy, and funded Operation Warp Speed, delivering vaccines in record time. All 5 bills got 90 votes in the Senate. Common sense found common ground. In February, Republicans told President Biden we wanted to keep working together to finish this fight. But Democrats wanted to go it alone. They spent almost $2 trillion on a partisan bill that the White House bragged was the most liberal bill in American history. Only 1% went to vaccinations, no requirement to reopen schools promptly. COVID brought Congress together 5 times. This administration pushed us apart. Another issue that should unite us is infrastructure. Republicans support everything you think of when you think of infrastructure. Roads, bridges, ports, airports, waterways, high-speed broadband. We're in for all of that. But again, Democrats want a partisan wish list. They won't even build bridges to build bridges. Less than 6% of the president's plan goes to roads and bridges. It's a liberal wish list of big government waste, plus the biggest job-killing tax hikes in a generation. Experts say when all is said and done, it would lower wages of the average American worker and shrink our economy. Tonight, we also heard about a so-called family plan, even more taxing, even more spending, to put Washington even more in the middle of your life, from the cradle to college. The beauty of the American dream is that families get to define it for themselves. We should be expanding opportunities and options for all families, not throwing money at certain issues because Democrats think they know best. Infrastructure spending that shrinks our economy is not common sense. Weakening our southern borders and creating a crisis is not compassionate. The president is also abandoning principles he's held for decades. Now he says your tax dollars should fund abortions. He's laying groundwork to pack the Supreme Court. This is not common ground. Nowhere do we need common ground more desperately than in our discussions of race. I have experienced the pain of discrimination. I know what it feels like to be pulled over for no reason, to be followed around the store while I'm shopping. I remember every morning at the kitchen table, my grandfather would open the newspaper and read it, I thought. But later I realized he had never learned to read it. He just wanted to set the right example. I've also experienced a different kind of intolerance. I get called Uncle Tom and the N-word by progressives, by liberals. Just last week, a national newspaper suggested my family's poverty was actually privilege because a relative owned land generations before my time. Believe me, I know firsthand, our healing is not finished. In 2015, after the shooting of Walter Scott, I wrote a bill to fund body cameras. Last year, after the deaths of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, I built an even bigger police reform proposal. But my Democratic colleagues blocked it. I extended an olive branch. I offered amendments, but Democrats used a filibuster to block the debate from even happening. My friends across the aisle seemed to want the issue more than they wanted a solution. But I'm still working. I'm hopeful that this will be different. When America comes together, we've made tremendous progress, but powerful forces want to pull us apart. 100 years ago, kids in classrooms were taught the color of their skin was their most important characteristic. And if they looked a certain way, they were inferior. Today, kids are being taught that the color of their skin defines them again. And if they look a certain way, they're an oppressor. From colleges to corporations to our culture, people are making money and gaining by pretending we haven't made any progress at all, by doubling down on the divisions we've worked so hard to heal. You know this stuff is wrong. Hear me clearly. America is not a racist country. It's backwards to fight discrimination with different types of discrimination, and it's wrong to try to use our painful past to dishonestly shut down debates in the present. I'm an African American who's voted in the South my entire life. I take voting rights personally. Republicans support making it easier to vote and harder to cheat, and so do the voters. Big majorities of Americans support early voting, and big majorities support voter ID, including African Americans and Hispanics. Common sense makes common ground. But today, this conversation has collapsed. The state of Georgia passed a law that expands early voting, preserves no excuse mail-in voting, and despite what the president claimed, did not reduce election day hours. If you actually read this law, it's mainstream. It will be easier to vote early in Georgia than in Democrat-run New York. But the left doesn't want you to know that. They want people virtue signaling by yelling about a law they haven't even read. Fact checkers have called out the White House for misstatements. The president absurdly claims that this is worse than Jim Crow. What is going on here? I'll tell you, a Washington power grab. This misplaced outrage is supposed to justify Democrats' new sweeping bill that would take over elections for all 50 states. It would send public funds to political campaigns you disagree with and make the bipartisan Federal Elections Commission partisan. This is not about civil rights or our racial past. It's about rigging elections in the future. And no, the same filibuster that President Obama and President Biden praised when they were senators, the same filibuster that the Democrats used to kill my police reform bill last year, has not suddenly become a racist relic just because the shoe is now on the other foot. Race is not a political weapon to settle every issue the way one side wants. It's far too important. This should be a joyful springtime for our nation. This administration inherited a tide that had already turned. The coronavirus is on the run. Thanks to Operation Warp Speed and the Trump administration, our country is flooded with safe and effective vaccines. Thanks to our bipartisan work last year, job openings are rebounding. So why do we feel so divided? Anxious. A nation with so much cause for hope should not feel so heavy-laden. A president who promised to bring us together should not be pushing agendas that tear us apart. The American family deserves better, and we know what better looks like. Just before COVID, we had the most inclusive economy in my lifetime, the lowest unemployment rates ever recorded for African Americans, Hispanics, and Asians, and a 70-year low nearly for women. Wages were growing faster at the bottom than at the top. The bottom 25% saw their wages go up faster than the top 25%. That happened because Republicans focused on expanding opportunity for all Americans. In addition to that, we passed opportunity zones, criminal justice reform, and permanent funding for historically Black colleges and universities for the first time ever. We fought the drug epidemic rebuilt our military, and cut taxes for working families and single moms like the one that raised me. Our best future will not come from Washington schemes or socialist dreams. It will come from you, the American people, Black, Hispanic, white, and Asian, Republican and Democrat, brave police officers in Black neighborhoods. We are not adversaries. We are family. We are all in this together, and we get to live in the greatest country on earth. The country where my grandfather in his 94 years saw his family go from cotton to Congress in one lifetime. So I am more than hopeful. I am confident that our finest hour is yet to come. Original sin is never the end of the story, not in our souls and not for our nation. The real story is always redemption. I am standing here because my mom has prayed me through some really tough times. I believe our nation has succeeded the same way because generations of Americans in their own ways have asked for grace and God has supplied it. So I will close with a word from a worship song that really helped me through this past year of COVID. The music is new, but the words draw from Scripture. May the Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May his presence go before you and behind you and beside you. In your weeping and your rejoicing, he is for you. May his favor be upon our nation for 1,000 generations, and your family and your children and their children. Good night, and God bless the United States.
And there you have the Republican response to President Biden tonight from South Carolina Senator Tim Scott. Typically a very difficult task to go after a president after one of these addresses to a joint session of Congress. Though tonight, South Carolina Senator Tim Scott putting the pressure on Democrats and Republicans to get work done here, in particular on the issue of race and policing in our country. He made the argument that Democrats wanted to go it alone on COVID relief, that they continue to want to go it alone with what President Biden proposed tonight before the American people. But he said race is not a political weapon, and he spent a lot of time at the end of that response there talking about race and policing in America, saying nowhere do we need more common ground than on the issue of race. I want to bring in Lindsay Davis on this. And we know that Senator Scott is playing actually a vital role behind the scenes now that this George Floyd Policing Act has passed the House. It's now in the hands of the Senate.
That's right. And I thought that it was interesting that quite often race tonight, the conversation was around police reform. And of course, in just the past 6 weeks in this country, more than 100 Americans have been killed at the hands of police officers, disproportionately Black and brown. I thought that he did a really effective job in kind of leaning appropriately into race and talking about his own experiences as a Black man, where he felt that his skin sometimes was the reason that he, even as a U.S. Senator, at times has been racially profiled. But then he kept going back to that idea of that common sense found common ground. And I think that it'll be interesting if we're able to, as he says, remain optimistic and hopeful, as he has talked about in the past, how in his one lifetime his family has gone from cotton to Congress, because as we know, there is that sticking point as far as immunity for police. And he is saying that the police officers, maybe the police departments maybe should have the lawsuits and not the police officers themselves. And so that continues to be something that keeps this from being bipartisan.
That issue of immunity is what they're going to be negotiating in the Senate. I want to bring in Nightline anchor Byron Pitts, who's also watching this. And I'm curious, Byron, if that end of that response there puts enormous pressure on Democrats and Republicans to do something, particularly at this moment in our country, after we watched Derek Chauvin found guilty on all charges, and given the headlines as of late, and this show of support across the country over this last year from diverse backgrounds, people of all backgrounds who want something done in our country. And the fact that the president said just before Senator Scott, let's get something done and let's get it done by next month.
Yeah, David, it seems that the president made clear tonight that he believes you can bridge America's racial divide with legislation. I mean, think about it, that this president mentioned white supremacy and terrorism in the same sentence. And his talk about the George Floyd bill and what he thought that Congress could do as it relates to race relations and policing, it reminded me of the words of Dr. King in 1963 when he said, it may be true that the law cannot make a man love me, but it can keep him from lynching me. So I think many people will be encouraged, people who voted for Joe Biden will be encouraged by his remarks and believing that the lawmakers can do something about this racial divide when it comes to policing.
I want to give the last word on just this segment to our justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas, who's covered this issue, obviously, for many years, Pierre. I want to take you back to a line from President Biden's speech. He said, most men and women in uniform wear their badge and serve their communities honorably. There were people really on both sides of the aisle who stood up and applauded that notion. He went on to say we must rebuild trust between law enforcement and the people they serve. We must root out systemic racism in our criminal justice system.
David, I thought that, Biden's speech was powerful in that regard, and as was Senator Scott. But there is reality, as Senator Scott talked about the notion of being pulled over for no reason, being followed in stores. The reality is, just since the Chauvin verdict in the George Floyd case, there have been cases involving unarmed black men being shot by police. That is the reality, and that pressure is out there right now, and African Americans and the police are interacting on a daily basis, and this issue is far from over, and the time for words seemingly is coming to an end.
Pierre Thomas weighing in on this as well. Pierre, thank you. And our coverage will continue in a moment. We'll hear from Governor Christie, from Rahm Emanuel, Yvette Simpson on this notion of whether or not Joe Biden is actually a bridge to the next generation, as he said during the campaign, or did he propose something tonight that's more transformational? We'll debate that in a moment.
We're so embarrassed we overpaid for this used car. We don't even want to show our faces around here.
Yep. Went to the wrong used car site.
Remember, if you don't see me, you're not seeing the most accurate price. Shop at Carfax. You won't have to overpay on a used car again.
All right, kids. Coast is clear. Wait for me.
Come on, come on. Shop millions of great deals, all with a free Carfax report. Only at the all-new Carfax.com.
When you skip the rinse with Finish Quantum, you save up to 20 gallons of water each time. Finish Quantum, with Active Blue technology, has the power to remove the toughest stains without pre-rinsing for dishes so clean they shine. Join Finish and skip the rinse to save our water.
Allergies with nasal congestion overwhelming you? Breathe more freely with powerful Claritin D. Claritin D improves nasal airflow 2 times more than the leading allergy spray at hour 1. Claritin D. Get more airflow.
Now Simparica Trio simplifies protection. Ticks and fleas? See ya!
Heartworm disease? No way.
Simparica Trio is the first chewable that delivers all this protection. And Simparica Trio is demonstrated safe for puppies. It's simple. Go with Simparica Trio. This drug class has been associated with neurologic adverse reactions, including seizures. Use with caution in dogs with a history of these disorders. Protect him with all your heart. Simparica Trio.
New tonight, Kimmel welcomes Justin Theroux, Tom Jones, and a visit from Mike Lindell.
Great, that's good. He's driving from Minnesota with a trunk full of pillows for us. It'll give you something to scream into.
Jimmy Kimmel Live, new tonight on ABC.
Easy Trade gets you up to 125% of KBB value. Upgrade your vehicle today in store or from home with Sheehy Direct.
It's easy at Sheehy.com.
Did you know you can go to libertymutual.com to customize your car insurance so you only pay for what you need?
Really? I had to... Okay, I'm on vibrate.
Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Sue's never toured with Redfin until now. Pick your time and a local Redfin agent will help you find
the one.
On-demand home tours from Redfin.
Hey, Rita, with 3% cash back on dining, including takeout from Chase Freedom Unlimited, you're always earning.
Then this is officially a takeout week.
That's a good choice, Rita. Bon appetit. Earn 3% on dining, including takeout, and so much more. Chase, make more of what's yours.
Hey, Alexa, play Hot 99.5 on iHeartRadio.
Good choice.
Tell your smart device to play Hot 99.5.
DC's #1 hit music station.
I'm a sucker for you. When you shop at Sheehy, you save during our spring upgrade event. Get our lowest prices on the Mid-Atlantic's largest selection. Shop online or in store at any of our 29 dealerships for big savings.
It's easy at Sheehy. Sheehy.com.
You know, we were talking earlier that in covering the presidential campaign leading up to the election, so often Joe Biden declared during the campaign that he saw himself as a bridge, not as anything else, to a new generation of Democratic leaders. And so I wanted to bring in Rahm Emanuel again tonight, former mayor of Chicago, former chief of staff for President Obama. And I'm curious, given what he proposed tonight and what you've witnessed in these first 100 days, Rahm, are we seeing a transitional president or more of a transformative one, taking, leaps, not steps?
Yeah, David, I would say it's not either or, it's both. I think the policies are transformational. I mean, when you think about it, and I've done this in Chicago, 4 years of additional education to a child's life, that's a quarter more, actually a third more for a child than we do today. And I've seen what free community college could do. Literally 84% of the kids that go to free community college in Chicago are the first ones in their family to ever go to college. That is transformational. On the other hand, I would think his own politics himself is transitional to another generation, creating a platform for them to succeed future. So I don't really see it as either or. I really do see it as something that's both of these. The one last thing I would say, you're still in a place in the first 100 days, the Republicans do not have the combination of the ability to demonize Joe Biden. They're trying to do it on policies. They're trying to do it, given up on doing it on him personally. And that has made him basically, he's got a lot of running room here.
I want to ask you about that, Chris Christie. Have they had a hard time sort of labeling President Biden? I mean, has he been too disciplined for Republicans? And on this notion, Lindsey Graham said, I think he's decided that his presidency is going to be big, transformational, and partisan.
Well, those who are speaking plainly haven't had a hard time defining him. Look, there's three things that the president didn't mention tonight in his speech that are in his bill. First, that he's now proposing that somebody who quits their job gets unemployment benefits for 75% of their salary if they quit their job, not laid off or fired. Second, he's proposed a huge new family business tax increase, where if we try to pass a business or a farm from one generation to the next, that there's going to be a huge tax increase that could very well necessitate them having to sell that business or sell that farm. Third, he has proposed a huge tax increase that will significantly destroy IRA, 401k, and 529 plan benefits for people to provide for their retirement and their children's education. You heard none of that in the feel-good talk tonight, but it's all there in the bill, everybody, and that is transformational. And I also believe it could be unifying, because if he in fact succeeds in doing those things, it will unify the middle class of this country against him.
Really interesting, Governor Christie. Thanks for that. Yvette Simpson, I want to bring you in on this as well, because I'm curious how progressives, given the fact that you gave President Biden a B tonight, where that puts the president in this. You know, Rahm was trying to explain that he's somewhere in the middle of being transformational, but also a calming presence for much of the country that doesn't want something as progressive as perhaps they're seeing in some of the policies proposed tonight. Where do you fall and where do progressives fall, do you think, tonight, given what they've heard?
You know, I think that Joe Biden is Joe Biden. I think there were places where, we expected him to fall short of where progressives expected, and that's a disappointment. With health care, the Affordable Care Act is not where most Americans are. We need a public option. We need a Medicare for all, and most Americans agree, and we expected him to fall short there. I talked a little bit earlier about the issue with criminal justice reform and the idea that he's still talking about good and bad apples and not talking about real systemic reform and not prepared to go all the way there. And we can talk about ending cash bail, legalizing marijuana, all of those things that didn't get talked about around criminal justice reform that progressives are pushing. He's not going far enough on climate. We've talked about that. We haven't talked about diplomacy and how he's talked about increasing the military budget rather than decreasing the military budget. And we know that's a major issue for progressives. So I would say halfway there, exactly where we expected him to be. We still need more.
All right, Yvette Simpson, our thanks to you as always. I want to bring in Cecilia Vega, our chief White House correspondent, because we were talking during the break that he did signal tonight saying Senator Kamala Harris and he had been meeting with Republican senators about infrastructure, at least having discussions. And he said there is room here for some debate, some going back and forth. And he actually spelled it out when it came to immigration, a willingness, it seemed, to break some points out.
Yeah, this is a big acknowledgement that he's not likely to get this overwhelming, sweeping immigration reform that he'd campaigned on. He said, let's end this existing war on immigration. But he's acknowledging that perhaps he might have better luck if we pull something as popular as protections for DACA recipients, dreamers, those young people who were brought to the country illegally as children. There is overwhelming political support in Congress around the country to give them. But there have been 11 attempts to pass protections for dreamers. They have all failed. There might be some appetite on Capitol Hill right now to pull dreamers out separately and pass that. Republicans may be willing to bend. There is a question, though, on whether Republicans will bend that much and give President Biden a victory on immigration, knowing that this is a huge weak spot for him going into the midterms. They know this is where he is weak, and they may not want to give him that victory.
Do they want to give up the issue going into the midterms? All right, Cecilia, thanks. Our whole team comes back here in just a moment. Stay tuned.
In life, now at the top of youth soccer, the inspiring work of the DMV's newest national champs.
Some big changes, including the clouds, the storms, and even cooler conditions. See here at 11.
Thursday on ABC.
People everywhere living with type 2 diabetes are waking up to what's possible with Rybelsus. Rybelsus works differently than any other diabetes pill to lower blood sugar in all three of these ways. Increases insulin, decreases sugar, and slows food. The majority of people taking Rybelsus lowered their blood sugar and reached an A1C of less than 7. People taking Rybelsus lost up to 8 pounds. Rybelsus isn't for people with type 1 diabetes or diabetic ketoacidosis. Don't take Rybelsus if you or your family ever had medullary thyroid cancer or have multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome type 2, or if allergic to it. Stop Rybelsus and get medical help right away if you get a lump or swelling in your neck, severe stomach pain, or an allergic reaction. Serious side effects may include pancreatitis. Tell your provider about vision problems or changes. Taking Rybelsus with a sulfonylurea or insulin increases low blood sugar risk. Side effects like nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea may lead to dehydration, which may worsen kidney problems. Wake up to what's possible with Rybelsus. You may pay as little as $10 per prescription. Ask your healthcare provider about Rybelsus today.
There may be trouble ahead, but while there's moonlight and music and love and romance, let's face the music and dance.
2-hour grocery delivery with Prime.
So with your home and auto bundle, you'll save money and get round-the-clock protection.
Sounds great.
Sure does.
Shouldn't something, wacky be happening right now?
We thought people could use a break. We've all been through a lot this year.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So...
Now's not a good time. 3/5 of in sync.
Are you sure? You have us booked all day? Read the room, guys.
Yeah.
Right?
When you skip the rinse with Finish Quantum, you save up to 20 gallons of water each time. Finish Quantum, with active blue technology, has the power to remove the toughest stains without pre-rinsing for dishes so clean they shine. Join Finish and skip the rinse to save our water.
Feel the cool rush of Claritin Cool Mint Chewables. Powerful 24-hour non-drowsy allergy relief plus an immediate cooling sensation for your throat. Feel the clarity and live Claritin Clear.
Back now with the team here in New York, and we always think it's important to remember where the country is as they watch this unfold. So let's bring in Terry Moran for a closing thought tonight, because Terry, we're still in the middle of this pandemic. It was just this week Joe Biden took off his mask and hoped for some sense of normalcy for everyone by the 4th of July.
That's right. The pandemic has exhausted people, David, as has this endless culture war, people fighting about what it means to be American, about identity. And President Biden's response to that is twofold. First, take off the mask and use government to try to make practical, pragmatic change for the better in people's lives. He's betting that that will calm the waters. The problem is those are all policy issues. Right now, those fights out there, they really aren't about policy. They are about identity. The Republican Party is unlikely to give many votes because it's a party that's ready to censure Liz Cheney because she recognizes the arithmetic of Joe Biden's win. He has an uphill climb with the country. What we heard tonight was an old-time populist, pragmatic agenda. The question is, does the newfangled identity politics on both sides trump that?
And did it land, Terry, with people so exhausted, as he said, at home?
And there's so many issues here, right? From the pandemic, you go to the epidemic of violence, and people just want life to return, and parents want schools to open. As Tim Scott said, our schools should have been open months ago, was his point. And as of April 7th, only 46% of public schools in this country are open full-time for in-person learning.
And you said there was one sentence, Martha, from Joe Biden?
It's never been a good bet to bet against America. And it still isn't, no matter what the divide is.
Why don't we all meet back here in another 100 days? There's plenty to talk about. Our coverage continues on ABC News Live, abcnews.com. Complete coverage on GMA first thing in the morning. And I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.